Hello everyone, my name is Alexander Zelenin. Today we will solve a problem called remove outermost parentheses. The plan for today is to observe the problem itself. Then we will design our algorithm, and after this we will calculate complexity of this algorithm. We'll think, is it possible to optimize it somehow? Then we will implement this algorithm, debug it, and see some findings during the solving of problem. So let's see what we have here. So the wallet parentheses string, a string with like 2 parentheses. So let me just check that the stream had started. Yes. So we need to have combinations of open and close quotes. Like after every open quote, we can even open new one or close old one. And the hard case here can be if the order of them will be somehow not valid. For example, it will be closed initially. But okay, so we need to remove outer ones. Like as for this one, we just need to remove this one and leave with something with that, something like that. So let's see what we have here. We're getting valid parentheses, and we need to make a string decomposition. So if we have something like that, we just remove these outer ones, like higher level ones, and just left with 3 of them. Okay. Some other example. For this one, we the same, remove outer ones and leave with something like a bit more complicated, since we have something like that inside. So, and the last example, we just remove all of them. I'm not sure, do we have like other symbols here or not? Let's assume that we can have some symbols like that, because maybe there was instruction, but it doesn't matter. So let's take a look at our limits. Length of string is up to 10,000 symbols. No, we doesn't have any other symbols. So it's in even open or close one. And it guaranteed that it valid string. So we just need to remove outer ones. So let's try to design an algorithm then. So for example, let's start with something like this. Let me add some spaces to... it's a bit hard to draw with such lines, but I hope it's fine. Let me maybe zoom in a bit, yeah, like this. So we will go from left to right, and I think we need to have something like some counter that will represent how deep we are inside them. So initially we have 0. When we have open one, we make like 1. When we go to second one, we increase counter to 2. when we close this one, we remove 1, so it will be again 2, 1. At this point we go to 0. So the idea is when we will go to 1 or when we will go to 0, all right, to 1 we can go even from if we go from 0 to 1, so we need to remove 1. Or if we go from 1 to 0, we also need to remove 1, because from this point we will have like again 1, 2, 1, 0. Okay, so we will remove both of this and this, and other ones will be untouched. So only 2 rules: changing our counter from 0 to 1 and from 1 to 0. We can represent this as some kind of rod with hills. So initially we go like straight, then we go 1 left up, then we go 1 left up, then we go 1 left down, 1 level down, then we go again 1 level up, then again 1 level down, and 1 level down. So at this point we like hit the ground. I think I had solved something like that with the representation of levels. It was very similar. Now maybe it was on stream, I don't remember. So when we hit these points, we need to remove them and to make something like that. So we remove like lower level. To do this, we can go through string. We can put indexes of every of them that we need to remove to separate array. And then we can create our new string, or maybe we can create initially new string. So yeah, let's do like this. Instead of putting every of them, let's create a new string and just connect all the symbols at the end. So we'll just put every symbol that's not from this change to our array, then we will join our array into the string. So what will be the space complexity? Space complexity is how memory change depends on incoming variables. If we have longer string, obviously, like in worst case, we will have string only on of valid symbols. So our array will have the same length. So it will be like ON, since we have same length as initial array for memory consumption, since we save this in array. For the time complexity is how CPU usage change depending on incoming variables. So for CPU, we will go once through our string when constructing an array, and then we will join our strings, our array to string. So first operation will be ON, since we're just going through all symbols, and second operation will be also ON. So the total one will be like 2N, but we can drop the constants and it will be the same, so like ON. So ON sounds good to me. The possible optimization like is get rid of this part by modifying initial string, but I will explain a bit later that it also not as good from like algorithmic point of view. So sounds good. Let's try to write some code to do this. So we have our string, this one S, and we have something like level, current level. We start with 0, and let's create a resulting array, and let's return this array. So our result, we join it to get a string, and now we'll go through our string and take a look what levels we have. We also will need to store like previous level or something like that. So let's go. So from 0 to the last symbol of array, and for every symbol we will take a look what symbol, what is the current symbol, and depending on this we need to increase or decrease. So let's start with saving a symbol first, like current symbol. Symbol is bad name, it's reserved name in JavaScript. Let's name it somehow differently, for example char. If I remember right, there is no char reserved word in JavaScript. In other languages it is. So okay, let's name it like current char, okay, to do not have any problems like with independently from language. So we have current char. If current char is open one, otherwise is closed one. Since we have like valid string, we can sure that we have only this type of symbols. So if we open, then we increase our level. If we close, we decrease our level. Like this. And we will need to compare it with the previous level. So let's have also value like previous level, which will start with something the same, and we will just assign it like this. Or we can put logic inside and go without this. So if we have open quote and current level will be 1 after this operation, then we need to start. No, let me do it like I do right now. It will be easier. So we have previous level, we have current level, and now we need to check our condition, like from 0 to 1 and from 1 to 0. It's only 2 cases when we will ignore operation. Otherwise, did I miss something? Because it showed me, okay, strange place to write code. So if previous level is 0 and the current level is 1, it's first case. Let me have make some space. So, or if we go from 1 to 0, so it will be like same one, but 1 or 0. And we need to invert this logic. So for like make it a bit easier, let's just invert it. That's all. So we just add the not. So we have this condition, and if like we doesn't meet this condition, so it means that we doesn't on this level or this level, we will add our symbol to result. So result push or current char, like this. Okay, so let's try to run. Output is the same as expected one. Let's try to submit our code. And see, yep, successful. So like it doesn't matter faster it or not, I presume it's the same, it depends on some things. So the thing that we solve everything properly, and I had promised you to explain about arrays, about strings, why we cannot modify string itself instead of maybe I think I will put our logic here. It will be easier and we will don't need the like previous level. So if our open one, we need to check is level not equal to 0. In this case, we push our element. In other case, we need to check that our level is not equal to 1. Okay. So, and we don't need the previous level. Like this looks a bit easier. Let me just check one more time. Yes, everything is fine. Yes, everything is fine. So, strings in JavaScript immutable. What does it mean? It means that string itself cannot be modified. When you try to modify a string, for example, you have string like AAA plus A, instead of modifying the base string, even you have something like let test equal AAA, and you make something like this plus equal A. So you think that you just modify initial string and it's easy. But originally, JavaScript cannot modify this string. Instead of this, JavaScript will copy this string into new one and add additional symbol at the same time. So instead of have algorithmic complexity of 1 by adding one symbol, you have algorithmic complexity of adding all of these symbols. So it will be like ON additional. So it's very heavy operation. So with adding values to array itself and then joining, adding to array is very cheap operation. Like since we added to an end. And like there was another option. Another option was about change our string to array at the start and work with it as with array. The problem here is that with arrays we can only add or remove only last symbol efficiently. If we try to remove symbol in the middle, it's a very heavy operation since all symbols after this one will be need to shift to the left by 1, so it can took up to on operations instead of just 1. So removing elements from the middle of array is heavy operation. So prefer to use only like the last element of array if you need to have optimal speed and so on. So let's try to calculate our complexity, what we got here at the end. Maybe if you see this in recording, just set on pause and try to calculate by your own. So we have space complexity and time complexity. For space complexity, where are we storing our variables? Where we have variables? We have like 1, 2, and 3. The first one is just an integer, so the space complexity is 1 for this. The second one is array that will contain up to the same string that we got originally, so it's on. And here we just store one symbol and reuse it every time, so it's like O1 and it's reused. So at the end we have space complexity of on. For time complexity, let's see what operation we have here. Assigning variables is 1, assigning empty array is 1, going through string. By itself, it's already on. What we have inside? Getting one value is 1, condition is 1, another condition is 1, pushing to array is 1, modifying our variable is 1. So okay, for everything inside is 1, so it doesn't modify the complexity of cycle itself. So we have on. Okay, and in the end we also make a join operation. So it will go through every symbol. So this operation have also on complexity. So we have something like O to n, where we can drop constants, and in the end we have on. So everything as presumed initially, so we are like in a good shape. Let's think what findings we have here. The first finding is that modifying string itself is not a good idea since it's not efficient. The second finding, that we can very efficiently check every symbol by just see on which level we are right now and like test only our edge cases. So mostly that's all for this one. So set like, subscribe, and I will start the second string just in 1 minute.